Turner.
Last night, I received a letter from my elections director, and I forwarded on to Chairman Fleming this morning. We only had a brief minute to discuss it. That has had an impact on me, and that not only that, but I also took some time to do some additional reading of materials I had not had an opportunity to read beforehand. I would like just a little bit more time to consider some of the other implications I had not previously. And I'd like to move the table, if appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we have a motion to table. We have a second. All in favor that this bill be tabled, laid on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Is there any doubt? Do we need to have a hand vote? I believe the noes have it. We're back to the original motion as a do pass by committee substitute. Any further discussion? Mr. Trammell.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the opportunity that you gave people to testify on this bill, and I won't belabor the point. I think as I said earlier, one of the philosophical questions in this is whether we're going to do hand-marked paper ballots or whether we're going to do electronic ballot marking devices. And I think the testimony from the cybersecurity experts is something that we should heed as a committee, and therefore I'll be voting no on this measure.
All right. Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I too appreciate the chairman's effort to let the public be heard, but just because there are a lot of people watching this on the internet, and everybody's concerned about having safe and fair elections in Georgia. But is it not true, to the author of the bill, that this is just coming out of subcommittee and will be taken up in full committee, and this is just the first start of the entire legislative process to have fair, accurate voting in the state of Georgia, and this is just the subcommittee's recommendation to the full committee. Is that not true?
I think it's absolutely true. As the chairman, as our secretary of caucus, chairman, as our secretary of caucus, treasurer understands, it's going to go to full committee, it's going to go to the House, it's going to go to the Senate. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more discussion in this process.
Thank you for starting this process.
Before I take the final vote, I'd like to make a comment. I want to thank the subcommittee members. I'd like to thank all in attendance. This was a very strenuous process. I want to thank all of the citizens that took time to come and to be heard, whether there was redundancy or anybody else, because they spoke with emotion and passion. I will say from my standpoint that I have, this has been quite an experience, but I'll also say that I have some concerns. I expressed some of those concerns yesterday, that I'm afraid that the partisanship of the last year has created a lot of problems. It's also made a lot of things known of flaws in the system. But it's also put forth an attitude to a lot of people that there are people out there that are plotting and strategizing against them. I don't see this. I saw the Secretary of State's office being criticized because they were the ones that are gifted and by legislative statute as the depository for the state election laws. But the one thing that I continue to be concerned about, when I continue to hear the word disenfranchisement or such words as that, they seem to be buzzwords that are tossed around. But at the end of the day, the actual voting, the actual handling of the election process is in the hands of the local elected officials. The local elected officials. And I don't think disenfranchisement and things like that, those words need to be clarified. That maybe there's errors, maybe there's mistakes by those local folks. I know that in my meeting with the 3 boards of elections of the counties that I represent, they didn't have any problems, but what they asked me for was one thing, that's uniformity. They know what the rules are, and they operate by the rules. And those registrars in Franklin and Hart and Madison County, they do it awful well. They go overboard to be sure it's done. But the only thing they ask for is uniformity. They know the laws, but when a judge is called in and in the spur of the moment, a judge changes the process, that affects uniformity. But the people in this legislature, no matter what their party is, they're not the enemies. We're up here to ensure a vital election. That being said, we have a motion to pass as a committee substitute, House Bill 316. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. And the ayes have it, and I would encourage you to work with the author to clarify a couple of the amendments that y'all had. Thank you, ladies and, I'm sorry. Chairman Reinders wishes to make an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the hard work you and the subcommittee have done on this. More on that later. I want to announce that there will be a full governmental affairs meeting today at 3 o'clock in room 341 of the Capitol. We will let you know what the agenda is as soon as we possibly can. I do want to make a couple reminders pursuant to our rules, and that is any amendments must be given in advance, 2 hours at least. I ask that those amendments be drawn up by Legislative Council and given to Chairman Fleming as it relates to 316. And with that, Mr. Chairman.